Transmutar Paranormal presents True Stories. Episode 1. The Night of the 100 Knives. How solid is the reality you see in front of your eyes right now? You look at a table and it's a table. You look at your father and it's your father. But what if, in the blink of an eye, the internal filter of your mind were to completely shatter? What happens when the person who gave you life stops being human in your eyes and becomes something else? Into a mask, into a puppet, into a demon that must be destroyed? Horror sometimes doesn't need monsters under the bed. Sometimes horror is simply a wire that crosses in the brain of normal people. People like you, people like your neighbors. It's the year 2000, Manzanares neighborhood, Saavedra in Buenos Aires. A place where nothing ever happens. Tree-lined streets, middle-class houses, the silence of routine. Silvina and Gabriela Vázquez lived there. They weren't outcasts, they had no criminal records. Gabriela studied design, Silvina studied economics. They were perfect. However, behind the closed curtains of Manzanares Street, number 2300, a storm was brewing that forensic logic would take years to unravel. A storm made of mystical delirium, psychological manipulation, and a question that chills the blood to this very day. Was it a shared psychotic episode? Or did the Vázquez sisters see something that we can't see? Welcome. Today we present The Night of the 100 Knives. To grasp the carnage, we must first understand transmutation. No one suddenly decides to dismember their father with a kitchen knife one morning. It's a process, a slow erosion of identity. The Vázquez sisters had found a refuge, or so they thought, in a center called Transmutar. This place was run by a man, Sergio Echeverri. He called himself the Alchemist. Testimonies from that time paint Echeverri as a charismatic, captivating figure. A man who spoke of purification, of spiritual warfare, of cleansing the aura. Silvina, the younger sister, was the first to fall. She left college, left her friends, her world shrank to the four walls of the holistic center and to the words of the alchemist. Gabriela, the oldest, followed her soon after, and here a terrifying psychiatric concept comes into play. La folie à deux, madness shared by two. It's a phenomenon where one person induces their delusion in another, creating a shared reality that's impenetrable to outsiders. In the sisters' minds, their house was no longer their home. It was a battlefield. And their father, Juan Carlos Vázquez, an ordinary man, a widower who only wanted the best for his daughters, became the enemy, but not because they hated him. No. In the twisted logic that the Transmutar Center had planted in them, the father was the obstacle to their spiritual elevation. According to later accounts, they felt that a dark energy lived within him. They began to see things that weren't there, shadows, changes in his face. The brainwashing was systematic. They were taught that in order to ascend, they had to purge. The word purge echoes in this case like a fatal omen. What does it mean to purge when the filth you see is a human being? We arrive at March 27, 2000. It's nighttime. The Vázquez family's house is silent, but inside, reality has been irreversibly shattered. The sisters no longer see Juan Carlos in front of them in the living room of their own house. What they see is a doll. That's how they would later describe it to the psychiatric experts.
It wasn't Dad. It was an evil mass, an empty shell taken over by evil.
The attack wasn't self-defense. It wasn't an argument that got out of control. It was a ritual. I want you to picture the scene, not out of morbid curiosity, but to understand the magnitude of the psychotic break. Juan Carlos was attacked with a ferocity that forensic experts rarely see. The technical term is overkill or excessive killing. When someone is stabbed once, they want to kill them. When they're stabbed 100 times, they want to erase them from existence, and they want to destroy what they represent. More than 100 wounds. 100! But there wasn't just physical violence, there was noise. A lot of noise. The neighbors didn't hear a regular fight. They heard chanting, they heard prayers in languages that didn't sound like Spanish. It was Silvina and Gabriela in a complete trance, trying to remove or exorcise the demon from their father's body. Literally. The wounds weren't random. They had a dissection pattern. They were looking for something inside, trying to extract the darkness that the alchemist had told them existed. Imagine the mental dissociation required to do that. Your hands are covered in your father's blood, but your mind tells you that you're doing a good deed, that you're saving the universe. At that moment, in that living room in Manzanares, hell wasn't a biblical place. Hell was the utterly terrifying and fractured minds of those two young women. When the police finally broke in, the scene was Dantesque. They did not try to flee, they did not try to hide the body, they were simply there, exhausted and shocked, as if they had just finished a difficult task, yet one that was necessary to them. The doll had been destroyed. The father been set free. Human justice has limited tools for dealing with the inexplicable. The verdict was swift and forceful, but it left a bitter taste. Criminally non-responsible, Article 34 of the Penal Code, acute psychotic episode with mystical delusion. They weren't sent to a regular prison, but to psychiatric institutions, Unit 27 of Borda and Moyano Hospital. Legally, the case was closed. They didn't know what they were doing, they were ill. But this is where the crime brushes with the paranormal, and where the uncomfortable questions begin to arise. First, there was the unsettling lack of any initial remorse or regret. For a long time, even while medicated, they maintained the logic of their delusion. There was no guilt because in their reality, they had killed a monster, not their father. Second, the shadow of Sergio Echeverri. The alchemist was investigated. There was talk of inducing suicide, of the illegal practice of medicine, of psychological manipulation. But it could never be proven that he gave the direct order, kill your father. He only planted the ideas. He only created the entire scenario. Ultimately, the girls were the ones who carried out the deadly deed. The man who designed the mental labyrinth where the Vázquez sisters got lost never paid for the crime of blood. He was set free, a sinister shadow that dissolved into history. And finally, we're Gascum. We must consider the eventual fate of the sisters. This is the part that might truly keep you up tonight. Insanity, according to both legal systems and established science, can actually be quite temporary. Silvina and Gabriela spent years institutionalized. They were treated, they were cured, and they were released. It is said that Gabriela rebuilt her life, that she started a family, that she is a mother. It is said that Silvina tried to go back to school. They now walk the same streets that we do, and they shop in the very same supermarkets as us. And this brings us to the final conclusion of this case. If the human mind is capable of breaking to the point of seeing a father as a demon, and then repairing itself to return to normal, what guarantees us that our own senses are reliable? How far is any one of us truly from our own horrifying moment of personal transmutation? The case of the Vázquez sisters reminds us that the most dangerous demons don't come from hell. They come from a mistaken idea planted at just the right moment in a fragile mind. This was Paranormal Late Night. Real stories. I'm Hector Rossi, and remember, when you look into the eyes of the one you love most, make sure they're still who you believe they are. Until the next darkness,